question. Can you tell me something about test automation process? The way for manual testing, they ask, can you tell me that software testing process for your testing? The same in automation interview also they will ask, can you tell me something about automation testing process? What are the process being really followed in the automation? The first of all, we should validate whether automation testing is really required or not. That is the first validation we should perform. Because if you wanted to bring any new thing into the testing, it needs to be validated. Do we really require or not? Then we should also perform feasibility checks. What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages with the new tools or new way of bringing automation? So all those things we need to validate. So we need to validate these items before we are picking any new tool for automation. Right? These are the some of the process which we follow when we are identifying a new tool, and what all the things we are going to do once we identify the tool and once we start bringing the automation. The third important thing here is the important automation process is you should identify the tool. What kind of tool is really required for you to automate, and this is done based on the technologies being used in our application, based on the technologies being used by your company, and whether those technologies being really supported by this automation tool or not, whether similar kind of companies also use similar kind of tools for to automate. So you should do lot of validations. You should perform a POC for your application just to ensure that in all the aspect this automation tool really supports your application or not, right? Hence, identifying before identify you have to do a detailed POC, ensure that you get sign up from all the stakeholders. Then that is the time your automation things will kick off, right? So once the tool is identified, the next step is, so as I was saying in earlier question, so you should clearly define what you are going to automate and what you are not going to automate, right? This is very crucial in any aspects. You should define what is in scope, what is in not scope for test automation. That needs to be well documented, and this need not keep visiting every time, every minute, because when we are doing POC itself, we will be having a very clear idea what things it using this tool, what can be automatable, what cannot be automatable, right? Then once that is identified, so you should come up with a detailed test plan and detailed strategy for your testing approach. So you should come up with a detailed strategy and a plan for automation. Then once that is done, so the second step is you should develop automation framework. You should develop automation framework. There are various automation frameworks available, and you should validate just to see whether which framework is very feasible or very useful for your product or an application to automate, right? Not every framework is useful for you. That is where you should do analysis, put your thought process, work with the test architects, get hold of them, and understand what is really required. Based on that, put in strategy. Once the framework is available, then you should start designing the test. When you're designing the test, you should keep you have to keep in mind you should follow all the best practices of the coding, all the best practices of reusability, all the best practices are maintainable of your automation scripts on the long-term goals. These are the some of the various best practices you should follow to ensure your automation scripts are really maintainable in the long-term goals. It should not happen that we develop today and tomorrow it is very difficult to maintain the test case, right? You should not do that. Follow diligently with the right practices, right checklist, right guidelines. Ensure that all your team members follows that. Have a review process for every code they return, right? Have a proper check-in mechanism. In that way, we diligently follow the practices very efficiently to bring good quality of the automated tests. So once the test cases are designed and automated, then we should be able to execute as and when it is required to execute. There are now the situation now DevOps has been integrated where automation tools are completely integrated with the DevOps journey, and as and when if they require, as and when the code is been checked in to the system, there should be a mechanism of triggering a sanity test or triggering a regression set. Again, it is defined in the DevOps journey, right? DevOps model, they will be defining on what basis, what frequency we need to execute the test. I hope you understood up to executing the test cases. Once we are executing, then we should be able to analyze the results. We should be able to analyze the results. And if there is any problem, when there is a test case failures because of the functionality, you should be able to log the defect. If any test cases is failing because of the script error, then it has to go with the maintenance of the scripts regularly. So with that process, these are the detailed process which you ought to bring if you are bringing any automation into your project. You should completely detail all this documentation, entire process as a one Bible, right? To anybody to follow these processes when they're bringing automation into their project. I hope you get hold of the fourth interview question, then how to answer this interview question.